So now we're inside the house. You want your guests to instantly see holiday decor as soon as they walk in the front door. So because of the beams that we have in this front hallway, I was able to think, what can I do with these beams? Let me try to bring them into the decor. I was lucky enough to find these moss stars at one of the arts and crafts stores locally. I bought every one they had in large and small, put them away for a few years until I could figure out what I was going to do with them, and voila, these beams were the perfect location for them. I took small nails and put them in position on the back side of the beams so that no one would see how these stars were being hung. They can stay up all year round, and then when it comes to Christmas time, I just hang the stars on the nails. I am careful, however, to be sure that when I was standing in the front hallway, I wasn't getting 10 stars in a row. You want to stagger it. It gives a little more impact when you see them. I also had the opportunity to think about, where am I going to put a splash of color? The moss is a pretty color, but it's kind of dark and dull, and the beams are kind of dark. So I thought I want to start introducing these pops of red. So I found these great amaryllis silk wreaths, and I was able to just drop them right over kind of boring pedestrian looking hurricanes. And as you can see, they lift right up, and it really dresses up the hurricane. It gives that pop of color so your eye has a little bit of a focus when it comes in the front door. You also can use this as an opportunity to put little bulbs, or I've got little frosted bulbs on the inside at the base of this candle so that when you actually walk past, you get a little glimmer there too. And because I wanted to be sure that my old arrangement that I pull out every year was still going to work with these new red amaryllis wreaths that I found some smaller wreaths that were like candle rings, and I just pulled them apart. There were probably 20 of these on a small wreath that was maybe $7, and it was a lot less expensive to just get that little wreath, pull the amaryllis out of it. I just snipped it at the end and then just tucked it into this arrangement along with the pheasant feathers. You already know I'm in love with feathers. I used them all over the front porch. So I used them here too, and you're trying to create kind of a continuity with your holiday decor. There's not much that goes undecorated in my home, including our hall clock here. It's a replica of an old clock from the 1800s, and I just get a couple garlands, hook them at the top, and hang them down the side of the clock, and it gives it a little more of a festive look for the holidays, dressing it up. And there's a bar that's right next to it, and I thought, okay, it's across from the hall table. Let me take one of these candle rings, and instead of pulling it apart, I'll just use it as it was meant to be, as a candle ring. And it ties in that red color again. If you think of your space as a canvas, it really makes it a little easier to decorate. Think of these pops of red as pops of red paint on a blank canvas. You'd have one over here, you have one over here, tie it in over here, and you think of it as an artist thinks of the space. And I think it'll be a lot easier for you to decorate your space in a cohesive way. So as we're moving our way down the hall, I've got this piece of furniture here. The angel stays here all year round, but at Christmas, like the clock, it gets decorated too. And I introduce again that splash of color, ties in the red from the hall table. Now we're going back a little further, and it's just a little touch of something that makes it look a little more festive. But another piece, and it's my favorite piece in all of my holiday decor, maybe other than the tree, is my bird cage. I forgot to mention, if you have trouble finding these moss stars that I was telling you about, it doesn't have to be moss stars that you're hanging. It could be snowflakes. Those plastic snowflakes are really inexpensive, or little ornaments. It could even be birds, which would be very cool. I may do that next year. But anyway, it's just the idea of getting something unusual hanging from the ceiling. And in my case, because I had the beams, it made sense. And speaking of unusual, I was wondering what I was going to do when I got this home. What am I going to do in this corner? I didn't really want to have a big plant. That was a little too predictable. And I thought it's fun to introduce a little bit of whimsy into every home, and this bird cage answered that for me. I went to my flea markets, I scoured all over to try to find a cool cage, and this is the one that I found. But it was really awful looking dark brown. So I took it outside, I sprayed it with beige paint, I sprayed it with gold paint, and then I just started scraping some of that paint off just to give it a lighter, airier feel. You might ask, how many birds do I have? None. But I found this great stuffed female pheasant that I've called Lucy, and she goes in the cage all year round, but at Christmas it's my opportunity to really bring something kind of childlike into my decor by really going to it on my bird cage. So what I do is I introduce my little elf collection, and they almost are like standing guard on this cage. I put a big bow on the top, and the small lights are actually embedded in a ribbon. I couldn't believe I found that. If I hadn't found that, I probably would have just gotten wired ribbon and wrapped it with small lights and put it all the way around so that in the evening it becomes almost kind of a little elf Christmas tree back here, even though there's no greens on it. So that's one of the things that you want to think about in your home. It's kind of fun to introduce something that's unusual, something unexpected, and something a little playful. I also am at the point now where I'm like wreath crazy. There aren't many spaces that I don't introduce a wreath into at this time of year. And the sunroom behind me is a perfect example. I didn't want to do a lot in the room because it's a pretty small space, and I thought, you know, it really doesn't make sense to really jam this with more things, because just like on a canvas, you don't want the eye to have so much to look at that it just can't focus on anything. So what I decided was I took this large wreath, put it on the window, made it the focal point on those French doors. You could almost see it all the way from the front hallway. But I thought instead of the traditional colors of Christmas, the red and the green, because the space is a little more tropical feeling, I got this kind of burnt metal color. It's kind of a burnt orange apricot color, and that's what the focus is in that space, is that wreath, all done. So that's what I did with this space. Let me show you the living room next.